System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Tuesday, May 19th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja Little Tanky Summer. Amoja, hello. Happy Tuesday. It's going up on a Tuesday.
Man, what's good, man?
Man, I'm out here chilling. I'm doing what I do. Beat the first case like John Gotti.
There it is.
And I'm just trying to survive, man. Let's jump into some geopolitics. You want to do that?
Shall we?
Shall we? Okay.
Shall we?
This is a big deal, and we haven't mentioned it just because there's lots of big deals out here. But the Western general media, they're going to obfuscate. They're going to step away from this story. But this is a big deal. I'm going to read this to you, and I want you to give me your thoughts and any other information you may have. Honduras Gate. Leaked recordings reveal a sweeping Israeli operation to destabilize democracy in Latin America with the help of Trump, Milei, Bukele, and more. This is from Reactionary International in Action. Israel obviously has played a role in Central and South America for quite some time. And we know that Argentina, I mentioned Milei, Argentina has a very strong bond and tie with the Israelis. Can you tell us more about this story, what you know, and what are your thoughts?
So first off, let's go ahead and ground everybody with where these leaders take place. Trump is, of course, United States of America. Milei is Argentina. Bukele, as people should remember, is where a lot of the so-called illegal immigrants were sent in El Salvador. You know what I'm saying? So the people were essentially sent from ICE to these holding facilities in El Salvador. Now, a big part of what they were talking about there isn't even discussed. And that was how all of those guys, plus Netanyahu, worked to have a known narco trafficker released so he could be reinstalled back into his government. This all goes back to what we're saying when we talk about you have to be watching all the pieces on the puzzle. We're in the low intensity part of World War III right now. No one wants to admit that. Everybody wants you to believe, it's just little skirmishes here and there. No, what you're seeing in the Americas right now is the American consolidation of its footprint. It is making sure there are no other world powers that it would consider a rival in the entire American continent, including the Caribbean. This is why all of this is connected to what's happening in Cuba right now, what happened in Venezuela, what's happening in Colombia, how we have these little border skirmishes. Because Petro is nominally, right, leftist. He's what you would call a true democratic socialist. Not like the corny AOC kind, but the kind that's like, let's do, Americanized democracy and still have a little liberal governance, right? And that's too much. Right, considering that Colombia had been ruled by right-wing, essentially strongmen for the past 50 years at least. Even that little bit to the left is too much. The fact that he's trying to make peace with FARC and stop this civil war, this senseless civil war that's been plaguing Colombia since, the time of Pablo Escobar, All of the leftist governments are at risk. We've already seen what happened with Delcy, and we'll talk more about that this episode in Venezuela, how she's given up Maduro and everybody that seems to be connected to the Bolivarian revolution. You see this happening in places like Ecuador, where they're coming once again for the leader, Evo Morales. They're literally trying to kill him. They framed a story on this man where they said that he had sexual relations with a minor and got her pregnant. It took the minor to come out and say, none of this happened. All of this is a lie, and people are still going to carry this water because at the end of the day, when you're smeared with a sexual smear, all anybody remembers is that you were accused of something ugly, whether or not you're guilty, innocent, and nobody really believes that you're innocent. So now this is just one more thing. They'll be able to make it hard for the quote unquote liberals to come to the defense of Evo Morales. Oh, you want to protect this PDF? The PDFs that we know are all in the Epstein files. And a lot of you guys voted for some of those guys. Some of you guys are going to vote for some of those guys again. And you'll have your excuses, oh, lesser evil. But can you be on the island and really be a lesser evil? Because the thing that we know is none of these South American dudes is on the island at all. The last thing I'll say about this is a moment for Lula to really step up and understand what is at risk. Because let's be honest, Brazil should be the superpower of South America. And if they don't understand this is a challenge to them to prevent them from becoming the nation that they could be, then they will fail this test that is coming. Because this is not about Venezuela. This is not about Colombia. This isn't even about Cuba. This is about hegemony. And the United States making sure they have worst case scenario, they lose the Middle Eastern markets. Worst case scenario, they lose access to the African markets, the Asian markets, European markets. They'll have all the resources they could ever need on the North American and the South American continent, which will probably also include Greenland. It's silly that people continue to act like, oh, this is just Trump, and Trump is insane, and he's crazy. Why aren't the Democrats fighting against this? Not in any kind of real way, which should let you know they're using Trump to be the front man to do this very ugly thing.
You mentioned it, but let's bring some receipts because I think receipts are important. It's just not our feelings. It's not just our opinions, which some of them are. This is receipts. 30 pounds of enriched uranium from Venezuela moved to SRS. About 30 pounds of highly enriched uranium has been removed from a research reactor in Venezuela and transported to Savannah River site for processing and reuse. The U.S. Department of Energy National Nuclear Security Administration announced May 8. According to NNSA press release, the 13.5 kilograms of uranium enriched above 20% supported physics and nuclear research at the RV-1 reactor. When work was completed, the facility in Altos Marandinos in 1991, its uranium became surplus material. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was arrested by the United States in a military operation in January. This is one of those things where we were really hoping, sort of like Iran or like many of the resistance groups, that if you remove the leader, if you do a decapitation strike, this is obviously not a decapitation strike, but it was an abduction, you will be able to then use the rest of sort of the leadership as a what am I word I'm looking for, use it as sort of to make it more viable, a viability play. Oh, well, this is the vice president of Venezuela because it can't be Machado, it can't be her, it can't be the Nobel Prize peace winning a former candidate
that nobody in the country would vote for, that would get less than 12% of the vote.
Trump has mentioned that.
So how is it democracy?
Yeah.
Right?
It's
yeah.
not.
And so what they did was, and this is a clever thing. You see colonizers do this all throughout history. When Alexander the Great finally conquered the Persian Empire, what he realized is the way that their government was administrated was so perfect, there was no way he could add to it that would make it better than it already was. So all he had to do was remove the manage, right? And then keep the satrapies, right? Because the government was already arranged in such a way that was very efficient for managing the empire. This is what the Americans understood about the Venezuelan government. The way that it was set up was very useful for maintaining the people, keeping order, providing the services that a government needs to provide. Their biggest ultimate problem was Maduro, because he was the person that would not allow them to be colonized. So instead of going to war and destroying the state apparatus and having an Iraq situation where you have to have fake elections and, somehow Machado wins, which nobody would have believed because she's so deeply unpopular, right? Get rid of the one person that's that's going to make the biggest stink, Maduro. And I want to remind you guys, there's no way that you can legitimize Delcy without, okay, acknowledging the legitimacy of Maduro. Because as TMK already said, this was the vice president that was brought in on the same elections that brought him in. And when you ask her, when's there going to be an election? Oh, I don't know. Why don't you know? Like, there's not a war going on in your country. The president has been forcibly removed, and there is no mandate for the people, from the people, for you. You haven't had the opportunity for the people to say, we trust you. And so once again, we're in a serious situation where there's an appointed president who can be the president for life. It's a Ukraine situation where there's a president who's going to be the president for life. And apparently, so long as you call yourself president and not dictator or God emperor, that's good enough for the silly people that believe in democracy in the United States. But this is something where people have consistently misread this, right? Leftists looked at this and we had hope that, oh, it's some 5D dimensional chess. But I got to say, I've been seeing more and more people acknowledging that they were wrong about it. Amar Kazmi, a geopolitical analyst, said on Twitter, I have to admit it. My initial assessment about the situation in Venezuela after the January 3rd was incorrect. I was hesitant to accept the level of treachery that had taken place by the very same people who had for years been such loyal allies to both Chavez and Maduro. It's okay in geopolitics to make an assumption, to make a guess. We're working with limited information, the best information that we have. But I salute dude for being one of the people to step up and be like, I had it wrong. Inner City Left, we tried to take a step back from the very beginning and be like, we need to see how this plays out, because only in the deeds will we see what was done. And now that she's opened the country up for IMF, she's had, and let's be honest, 14.5 kilograms of enriched uranium. I wouldn't even say that's highly enriched. It's 20%. But I will remind you guys again, the viewership of Inner City Left, the threshold for a weapon is like 90 plus. So this was nowhere near weapons grade uranium, right? So once again, right, and there's no even an inference that Venezuela is working on a weapons of mass destruction program. So then why was this uranium surrendered to the United States? They weren't paid for it. Not that there's any price that a country should give up a resource like that for, right? They weren't paid for it. It just became part of the American stockpile. These are the things that are firmly on Delcy Rodriguez. And there's no way to 5-dimensional chess your way out of this. You can make an argument that she chose to look for the protection of her people and opt against war. But even that is belied by the fact that if she really believed in the will of the people, she'd put herself up for an election, which she understands at this point she would not win.
Yeah, a lot more to speak on when it comes to South America. We've been talking about this for a while. I want to show this video. This was the Gray Zone. They did just such good work. This is actually Evo Morales. I think you said Ecuador by accident. It's Bolivian, former Bolivian president Evo Morales.
Bolivia, yeah.
And,
there are things also happening in Ecuador, but definitely Bolivia.
Yep. So this is him. I believe this is from last year, or no, this is from today. But he's talking about an incident that happened last year, and we'll get a little bit involved into the leaked documents as well.
While I was traveling from my home along the Tunery route to the headquarters of the 6 federations at Radio Casa in Coca, an attempt was made to detain me involving 3 helicopters, along with military personnel and police officers. Fortunately, we survived despite being subjected to bursts of gunfire. Shots were fired in volleys. We barely escaped alive. My driver was wounded, and 2 of our vehicles were riddled with bullets, their tires completely destroyed. Further down the road, we were forced to stop and replace the tires. They were trying to cut us off. I believe my mother, may she rest in peace, saved my life. I am currently protected by a vigil organized here under very difficult circumstances the people mobilized. At first, they said it would last 3 days. I replied, "It doesn't matter, I don't want to impose." But the vigil continued. 1,000 comrades now take turns standing watch day and night without interruption. They represent the agrarian unions. They refuse to allow me to be detained. There is a mandate from the grassroots base here, protect Evo. It has already been more than a year. By October, it will be 2 years. Yesterday, I attended a meeting, and the vigil has intensified again because there has been another attempt to detain me. The deployment of 3 helicopters on October 27, 2024, was an operation designed either to detain Ivo or to kill him. We filed a formal complaint with the public prosecutor's office during the administration of Luis Arce, which claims to be a government of struggle, yet to this day, no one has been investigated over those shootings. I simply cannot comprehend it. It happened twice and still nothing. I made inquiries and was told that one of the helicopters was piloted by a Colombian national. I have many comrades in the Bolivian Air Force who previously served as my aides de camp and pilots. Why would a Colombian national be piloting a state-owned helicopter belonging to the Bolivian Air Force? As police and armed forces personnel later confided to me, the Colombian national was allegedly a CIA operative. I cross-checked the information, and it was confirmed to me that the CIA piloted a helicopter as part of the operation to detain me. It is a grave matter. There's a great deal of commitment throughout the region right now. The youth must identify both the internal and external demons. To me, the internal enemies are the right-wing forces in every country. The external enemies are the agents of empire and the prescriptions of capitalism. Governments acting on behalf of transnational corporations through the privatization of healthcare and education. As I have said repeatedly, they are targeting basic services and, above all, natural resources.
Let's dive in a little further. This is U.S. documents. Armed forces and Bolivian police are preparing a joint operation to kidnap Evo Morales and massacre the indigenous communities in the vicinity. Police officers opposed to the plan have leaked documents confirming the operation. So you heard it directly from Evo Morales, which, hey, you may not believe the story. You may think to yourself, oh, well, he's, no longer the president. Maybe this is some, a stunt or whatever it is. Of course, we know that that's not true. And they've been coming after Evo Morales for quite a long time. But this, to me, confirms the recounting of what happened. And this is another moment where the United States is overstepping so much. I mean, this is just like, again, war crimes. You mentioned he mentioned CIA operatives. We're just we haven't dived into Mexico quite yet, but that's still an ongoing story with the two CIA officers that was killed. Yeah. So your thoughts on this, man, and what Evo said and what's going on?
I mean, again, this goes to what we're talking about what the will of the people are. This isn't a professional army that's surrounding this man. These aren't mercenaries that have been paid to be there. These are the actual people. This was a man that when he was the president flew coach. He didn't even have a presidential plane. He was the lowest paid out of every democratically elected leader in the world. And it was that type of commitment to the people, which is why he is still so revered in his country, Bolivia. So much going on, man. So much is going on. Because again, in Ecuador, we have a very similar situation where the right-wing president that was essentially imposed by the Americans, who went against the will of the people and allowed American bases to come to their land, right? They're protesting that president right now. And there are reports that he is fled the country or that there is right. So again, what we have is, in Bolivia, we have the common people protecting Evo Morales. And again, we cannot pretend this is anything other than what it is. More than 5 years ago, Elon Musk said, we'll coup whoever we want. This man has been brought into the government, right? He was allowed to set government policy. No one voted for Elon Musk, right? But let's be honest, right? This goes back to, once again, keeping America prepared to act in a hegemonic way whenever it needs to. Because one thing that is very much untapped and under-resourced in South America are their rare earth deposits. All of this goes back to the Americans needing access to raw materials that right now the lines of working through them are all still Chinese. Chinese still controls the entire 70% of rare earth manufacturing and refining happens in China. And the United States is trying everything they can to break that dependency because so much is dependent on rare earth. Rare earth magnets are part of high-end computing. They're part of GPS coordination, making sure that you're able to do guidance systems for military rockets and missiles, right? There are so many things that rely on rare earths, not up to and including batteries for the whole EV revolution, right? These are, again, things whereas SpaceX has a vested interest, where Tesla has a vested interest, which again means Elon Musk, Department of Defense, the United States military in general has an interest. I think one of the things that we have to speak about, though, a person that has been incredibly capable, whose name is not even really out there in a major way, it's Marco Rubio. We have to acknowledge how he's utilized his State Department quite efficiently to create disruption all throughout the world, but very specifically throughout the American continent. Because ultimately, this was his task. Go in there and deal with your people, right? All of the Spanish speakers of South America and Central America and the Caribbean. Go out there and impose the American will. And in many ways, his policy has made him something of an emperor on this side, answerable only to Trump. It's important to remember that he has had this pissing contest with Hegseth for months. And what he's able to show Trump time after time is, my methods are winning. I am winning all throughout Central America. I am winning all throughout the Caribbean. I am winning all throughout South America. What is Hegseth winning?
Well, let's jump to that, shall we? Because of course there's more to talk about. But I think to your point, I mean, we're just really right back to this Monroe Doctrine, hey, this is our hemisphere. We've already talked about this. This is our hemisphere. Okay, we run this, and you guys can deal with whatever's going on over there, but this is ours. And, Brazil is really one of the last kind of powers that can push back against them. And we see kind of how tenuous that is. But yeah, I mean, Iran is still a huge part of what's going on in the world. There has been, I don't want to say ceasefire, but Trump kind of came out and was like, I'm not gonna, we're gonna postpone the war or whatever, blah, blah, blah. This was him a little earlier today. Talking, I guess, on the White House lawn or whatever. There we go.
Something maybe early next week, a limited period of time. Because we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would start with Israel. They would blow it up, and they would blow it up fast, but they'd blow it up. And I'll tell you what, they'd go after Saudi Arabia, they'd go after Kuwait, they'd go after UAE, they'd go after Qatar, I think they go after the entire Middle East, and it would be a whole different negotiation. It would be nuclear holocaust. And there's no question in my mind that they'd use it. There's no question. And I deal with these people. They're extremely radicalized. These are not people like what I deal with you.
I think pretty racist moment right there.
These people are writing books on Kant theory. I mean, I have to say that again. I mean, these are deeply intellectual people who mostly have been educated in the West. It's just incredibly, but he knows that he can always lean in on the racism and there will be very little pushback, So again, let's just play the numbers based upon what he's saying. Let's say everything he said was correct and all they want to do is destroy Israel. We know that their missile capacity is not depleted at all. Why aren't they doing it now? If they're so irrational, why have they been so patient with their strategic patience that's been utilized in a tit-for-tat type retaliatory military stance, which, by the way, has been so effective, it's actually changing military doctrine all around the world. The Russians have been much more likely since this conflict to utilize essentially the Iranian methods, right? When the Ukrainians send 300 drones and they attack Moscow, Russia sends 1,000 missiles back and new Orishnik lights, hypersonic weapons that they haven't even utilized in the theater of war, to once again say, please understand, I'm holding back almost all of my power. So once again, right, we know for a fact that the Iranians have been exercising what they call strategic patience for quite some time. So let's say, against all of the odds, they really do want to have this weapon, right, which they've shown no indication of wanting to do. How are they going to have this many, right? So one day they're going to have 0, but then the next day they're going to have 1. But then the next day they're going to have enough to take care of Kuwait, and they're going to have enough to take care of Saudi Arabia, and they're going to have enough to take care of Bahrain and Israel, right? That's a lot of warheads. That's a lot of delivery systems. How could they get there in such a fast time, right? And if they have the ability to do that, why aren't they? Why haven't they? We've been told by Mr. Malachowski they're a week away from breakout for 20 years. You know, after their sites were hit, why didn't they immediately begin breakout? Right? Because if they did, by now they would already have that weapon, and which means they would have it and they haven't used it, or it means they don't have it. Those are the only two possibilities that you have. And so both of those things kind of already poke holes in the conversation that Trump is saying. What he's saying is conjecture, and conjecture is an unworthy science. That's even if you choose to take him at face value and believe that Trump really believes what he's saying, which I have no reason to do. There's no reason to believe that the Iranians have pursued nuclear weapons, because if they had, they'd have them by now.
Yeah, I mean, the plot has been lost. This really has never been about the nuclear weapons. This has been about destabilizing Iran. This is for the Greater Israel Project and, regional hegemony, which the, American doctrine, we talk about the Monroe Doctrine, but the whole American doctrine is hegemony everywhere. And that is what they're looking for in Iran. And that's where this whole thing started. But actually, it's going bad for them. And Iran, because they're in an existential crisis, have been getting better and better. We were reading that, Trump pushed back the ground invasion, or whatever sort of the next large escalation of this war is. And New York Times, again, they said that Iran's, become rapidly more effective at tracking U.S. air operations, improving its air defense, and becoming too strong at detecting signs of surprise attacks. They're getting better. They have the benefit of China and Russia. They are not going to back down, and they're not going to capitulate. And we've been mentioning it over and over again, just like Russia and Ukraine, which, hey, may wrap up soon. We don't know. Polymarket says it's 100%. How did they know? Not only that, we have, the conflicts that are existing in the Gulf states, and how long can those populations continue to move forward with, their support of these regimes. Those things are always a part of it. Where is UAE and Saudi Arabia? Where is their relations right now? Where is the relations, what's happening in Bahrain now? And those things are going to continue to get worse and worse, because what happens when, it's like, what happens when America does bad in Ukraine? Well, Ukraine gets punished. What happens when, America does bad in Iran? The Gulf states get punished. So that is what they're looking to do. And I think they're trying to figure out another plan, but I don't see it happening. And this is the difference between Iran and Venezuela. This is a country that has, like you said, 80 million people. They've been pushing back. They have the political will and strength. We talked about, the president, Delcy, vice president. We don't know when elections are going to be. Where we hear that from? Volodymyr Zelensky. Oh, the elections, we can't have them now. But what happened when the Iranian president's helicopter crashed and he died alongside the foreign minister?
Less than 90 days.
90 days, pop right up. So the whole idea of democracy and bringing democracy to places and people being authoritarian, all this other stuff is totally ridiculous. You mentioned it. This is about resources. This is about political encapsulation, and that's what this is about. But it's not going to end well.
It's not the United States' job to pick other world leaders. It's the job of those people. It's the job of those people. And so, like any neoliberal that's spouting, you're just still spouting neo-colonial bullshit. You're creating the pretext to bring American violence to other nations. And people see it. The Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, said on Monday that a U.S. attack on Cuba would cause a bloodbath, warning that a warning that comes as the United States officials are setting up pretext for war on an island nation. Like, that's from anywar.com. So again, ask yourself, what possible threat does the nation of Cuba present to the United States?
Absolutely ridiculous that they said
and
that.
yet we are right here and ready to begin an attack.
We have to go to war with you because you might start a war with us. That's what they said with it on. That's what they said.
It looks like you want to defend yourself, and we don't like that.
And we don't like that. We're against that. We're going to blow up civilian infrastructure and kill civilians simply because we want to create a destabilization in your country. It's great that you mentioned the president of Cuba. We didn't touch on that today, but that could be imminent at any point in time. And again, a lot of talk. We'll see what happens.
The best defense for Cuba right now is a strong Iranian resistance. The Americans are tied up in the Middle East, and so they haven't. But now, realistically, what they should have done, and again, this just goes back to the friction and tension between Hegseth, right, and Marco Rubio. You had the entire naval fleet, not the entire naval fleet, but quite an armada.
A good amount.
Quite an armada outside of Venezuela.
Yep, one of the largest.
After you tipped Venezuela, you should have went straight to Cuba, but that couldn't happen. They knew that Iran's petrochemical resources were more important from a geopolitical point of view, and that Cuba was a luxury. But again, the American hubris is, we're just going to swing over there, knock them over, and then we'll bring them back and get straight to Cuba, right? Iran has been a thorn that they could not anticipate. That for some reason they had no understanding of their military capacity and their willingness to fight back. Again, I think this is what racism does. It just tricks you into believing there's no way these guys are smart enough to fight us. But these guys understand what the Americans do to those that they defeat. And if you understand, if it's that choice or death, a lot of people will choose death. I would rather, and that's where they are. And Cuba's in that same position. They're willing to risk that bloodbath to be free, to not be conquered by the Americans. And it's just silly to believe that the Americans have the best interest of the Venezuelans at heart. It's silly to believe that the Americans have the best interest of the Cubans at heart, the Iranians. Americans don't even have the best interest in the life state, the life of Americans. The president himself said, I don't care about the average American's financial situation. So why would you foolishly then believe that the Americans have some sort of mealy-mouth ass commitment to human rights in Cuba or Venezuela or Iran?
Yeah, it's truly ridiculous. It's the whole thing of, I got to stop. I came here to stop a war, not to start a war. We need to end this now. Peace by strength. This is what they do. Let's give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify. We go where the people go. And if the people there, we do a Pocket Cast. Check out our Podbean. Leave us a review if you're on Spotify or, any place that you can leave reviews. We appreciate those. And we see the reviews, actually, by the way. I went through our Spotify reviews, a lot of beautiful things. We appreciate y'all. And shout out to the trolls. There's a few of them. We see them more on YouTube than anywhere else, but what it is, Shout out to the algorithms. You boosting them up. Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins, right behind me. Link in the description. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. We love you guys like cook food. Y'all the real heroes. InnerCityLeft.com. InnerCityLeft on Instagram.
Go stream Pretty Little Stoners. Go take a look at New London and weep for the $85,907,800,000 that have been wasted on the Iranian debacle.
There's nothing
so
for
far.
you. There's nothing for me. So, yeah, congratulations. Could have ended homelessness and eradicated hunger, but it was more important to slowly lose a war with it on. Anyway, for Amoja Low Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Interstate Love Broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city love.